coal. It fueled homes across the world. It powered ships, and it laid the railways in the past with the blast furnaces using the coal. And Llanerch was a part of that revolution, that industrial revolution. But it does have its prices. The cost of life can come with coal. Today we'll be looking at a Victorian era mining disaster. This is the story of the Llanerch disaster. In 1858, Llanerch Colliery opened, or what used to be formerly known as Colliery. It opened with two shafts, which are fenced off behind me. Shaft number 1 being for ventilation, and shaft number 2 for being the downcast to take miners underground. The headgear was wooden, and it was stood 45 feet high. The Partridge and Jones and Company took over Llanerch Colliery before its peak. It put J. Morgan as manager, and at the time it employed 1,747 men underground and 206 people worked on top in the surface. Behind these trees once stood the former colliery. Llanerch wasn't immune from disaster. The early years of the pit, in 1869 at 8:30 in the morning, 16 men were working underground when a localised explosion of methane gas killed all 16 in the meadow vein seam. Sadly, this was only a minor disaster. The second more powerful explosion occurred on February 6, 1890. This explosion happened before 9 AM and it ripped through the mine workings. Underground at the time was John Morgan with 300 other men. John Morgan attempted to do his own rescue mission, but he told the Pontypool Free Press, "I found John Beard had been dragged from the pit and put to sit in a little airway. His foot was cut off and he was bleeding very freely." J. Morgan's rescue team wasn't underground for very long, but the following rescue team he waved goodbye to, and they descended underground. Sadly, these guys would pass away, and it would make it even more difficult, because on the surface, where we are now, was absolute chaos. The surface workers were just confused and dazed of what happened. The headgear was damaged and sent timber down the mine shaft, which made the descents more difficult for the rescue teams. Local doctors were arriving on scenes with ambulance, and other rescue teams from the collieries like Blindsition, Trans and the British. Also, a lot of locals were arriving up here from Pontypool, Snatchwood area, all because they just wanted to news to try and aid in the rescue effort. By midnight, 75 men and boys were brought to the surface alive, and after that it was just bodies the rescue teams were finding. Some were so badly burned they were very hard to identify in recognition of the families. They used pieces of clothing or jewellery or even cigarette boxes. But by the Friday, 150 bodies were brought to the surface, and days later 26 more bodies were brought to the surface. This was the final total of 176 dead here at Llanerch. Days and weeks following the disaster, funerals were held and many were buried in the Nodfa Chapel in Aberystwyth. But an inquest started almost straight away here at Pontypool, in the town hall specifically. The inquest looked in at many key aspects, and it discovered that many miners were unhappy with the use of a lock lamp instead of using a naked flame, which was preferred in Cwmbran and Tranch. But the inquest concluded that the owners and managers of the colliery was not at fault for the disaster, but an inflammable gas ignited as coal dust caused the disaster. And that was the end of the inquest at the Llanerch disaster. Continue following us, and Llanerch was very key in the First and Second World War efforts. As it did supply coal, a lot of coal from South Wales did end up in Scotland, go to Scalpa flows, and possibly Llanerch's coal did travel up to fuel the Royal Navy fleet. It would survive for a good couple of years under the Partridge and Jones Company. It still employed over 1,000 men, and later on it would get bought out by the Ebervale Company. After merging with the Ebervale Colliery, it ended up merging with the Crumlin Collieries. So it was under a massive umbrella, Llanerch, and it produced 4 million tonnes of coal annually before 1947. Then in 1947, during the post-war consensus, the coal industry was nationalised under the National Coal Board, or the NCB. Llanerch was placed in Division 6 Monmouth, and that year it would sadly close its doors forever. Now Llanerch is all but gone. Only the washery peeks out from the trees in the natural valley. It almost looks like something from a bygone era, but not far from there is the memorial. Open in September 2019, this memorial has a statue of a miner aiding his fellow worker. A plaque behind us which bears the names of the 176 men and boys, and also behind me is wood carvings of the scenes of Llanerch from the disaster to what the pit would look like. This is built on top what is the old mine shafts, and it is a fitting memorial for those lives lost on that day. This was the story of the Llanerch disaster, the story where we remember 176 men and boys who went to work that day and never returned home to their family. They were all husbands, fathers, sons, uncles, nephews, brothers, cousins, and their family would never see them again. As I always say in every short film or documentary that I do on coal mining, that is the price of coal. And I'm going to leave you with this tribute to the miners themselves.